JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Wednesday, February 5th, 8:56 a.m. Happy hump day. Talk quick about the market. Some names I'm looking at, go from there. S&P futures in the red. Markets look to open lower. We'll see how things play out here this morning. Overnight, Asian markets were mixed, although China markets were lower, they say, on tariffs. But there were reports out that the U.S. Postal Service was not allowing China and Taiwan packages to come to ship. I don't know how that looks like. And then this morning, the U.S. Postal Service comes out and says they removed the restriction. Who knows what that all looks like? There's been talk since the tariff chatter started on Friday. There's this loophole where $800 and below parcels are not, they don't get a tax on it, right? So it kind of is not part of the tariffs. And then you look, you have the discount retailers like Temu and I don't know who the other ones are. A huge opportunity for them. So that obviously if they get restricted, and the U.S. Postal Service is just one of many avenues for folks to ship products. But more on that in a second. But I think that was some of the, you saw China markets down overnight, but I still think these China ADR is going to go. All right, so overall markets, after the close yesterday, Amazon, AMD, they both reported great numbers, right? And you look at Google had, they beat revenue, beat EPS. They had strong numbers across the board outside their cloud business. And their cloud business it grew 30% year over year. The estimates were higher than that. So that's some of it, I guess. The other part of it was their CapEx spending. They're looking to spend $75 billion just on CapEx this year. Google's always been that story. They used to have these, how many years ago, not the Hail Marys, I forget what they used to call it, but they used to have all these initiatives they were spending money on that weren't part of their core business. I'm not sure if they call them the Hail Marys. I forget what they were called. But it always seems like every time the stock sold off is because of cost concerns. Then they got a new CFO, and then the stock went bonkers for the last however many years that is. I would not be surprised to see this Google bounce off the lows here. It's at 191, maybe back over $200. Depending on the premiums, may look for some strikes there. AMD also great earnings, beat revenue, beat EPS, but then some of their business is gaming. Some of the other branches of their business seem like maybe they missed estimates, declining growth. At some point, you got to think that bounces. I was actually looking for 135s on Monday. They were like 50 cents. By the middle of the afternoon yesterday, they were double. Would have been a prime opportunity to close them out, cover costs, ride freebies, but then they would have got smashed today. So we'll see. Maybe I'll visit that one. It's been a tough trade on AMD. But overall market, just want to see a move back over that 600 handle. There's going to be, it's actually SPY's right at 600 now as I'm talking. It's going to be continued saber rattling with these tariffs. It seems like a barrage of headlines all the time. And, if you let that get to you, it's going to be tough to trade, right? Because you can't just trade every little headline that comes out. The market's a very good forward pricing mechanism. So not saying it's pricing in every single headline that comes out, but you see some of the kind of, the S&P is down 0.01% for the week with all the headlines coming out, right? So it just kind of puts things in perspective. So I just want to see that 600 handle hold. Big report with Amazon tomorrow, and then that January jobs report is probably going to be the zinger of the week. It's got to, I hate to say it, just want to see a little weaker than expected unemployment rate uptick a little bit, and I think that will be good to go into next week, and then maybe we could start to work towards that 610 highs. And also under the cover, you peel back the onion here, and the yields and the U.S. dollar are going in the right direction. Yields have been falling, and the U.S. dollar finally picking the direction to the downside. So I think that just bodes well for more upside. All right, so that's overall markets. Individual names, Shopify, I say deja vu all over again. And sure enough, got those calls on Monday for a bounce. It was at like 112. And then we, had those deals with Mexico and Canada. And that kind of just removed out the headwinds for Shopify, which surprising that it was down so much on Canada tariffs. It's funny. And then the Shopify CEO was talking about, I forget. Well, anyways, so you take a look at the bounce yesterday all the way up to 120 before pulling back a little bit to close some of the calls out for over 100% to cover costs right at the open. And then later in the morning, I was able to close somewhere out for over 400%. And then I just held the rest. I might lock a few more in today. I would not be surprised to see it back over 120. It hit 120.46. So when I see that break today, and then I'm going to hold the rest into Amazon earnings pending any crazy pull. Like if we get back down to 115, maybe I'll salvage the rest. But I think if Amazon posts a strong number and the market finds some footing, I see Shopify like 125 plus. So call me crazy. I might hold the calls for that outcome. And then, of course, my 122s will look really nice But that's Shopify. Roku gapped out of the gate. You had Spotify earnings just kind of adding to that content earnings story with coupled with Netflix. You think that would bode well for a name like Roku? It was looking great in the morning. I almost looked to get to some more strikes. I was actually looking at weeklies, and then it did what Roku does from 82.70 all the way back down to $80. I'll still be watching for possible February strikes to encompass earnings. They're going to report earnings a week from tomorrow, but it doesn't make sense to put too much into the risk on Roku right now because all it's done is disappoint. Hopefully that'll change coming next week. And then on to Stratasys. SSYS closed up 10%. That's on the heels of its rally on Monday, over 20% on Monday. Able to lock the calls I got in December, the March 1250s for nearly 100%. I also went and got some March 15s, and then you look at the call volume is insane. It was like 7,000 contracts on the call side on a name that typically only sees maybe 100 contracts trade every day. The open interest on the call side is like 7,000 total for all the strikes. So not the case today because the open interest has went up. It's just pretty remarkable. I keep saying if it gets over $14, I think it has the possibility of heading much higher and much higher, maybe 20. So this morning, I'll probably, depending on what the 1250s were close, they were a double at the ask yesterday at the close. If I can get some of those out just to cover some of the costs on the 1250s, the 15s, I might look to get some June strikes for a move possibly to $20. And the 1750s look interesting on a risk reward basis. I think they're 25 by 45. So don't be surprised if I had some more strikes than that. And you pull it out for the big picture. It's only 14 months ago it was over $20. Not saying, again, I don't like to use price as a guide for historical purposes. There's more to go in. It's just saying, hey, the stock was at $20 14 months ago. But I think there's ingredients there. And the story with SSYS has always been, since it's falling from grace over the last decade, has been its return to growth. And maybe this is it. All right, so that's SSYS. VKTX, I added some strikes. They have earnings after the close today. The plan would be to lock some in to cover costs and ride the rest into the report. If I can't do that, I'll probably just close them out and revisit. The good thing is the premiums were starting to go up. I got the strikes and the stock was pretty much flat, and my premiums were going up on my calls. Hopefully we get a repeat of that today. I can lock some in to cover costs, even if it's just a couple freebies. I'll hold into earnings. The only thing with VKTX would be positive commentary or any kind of surprises from the earnings call, which has happened in the past, right? The last earnings or two earnings ago, they talked about pushing their study straight to phase 3. We'll see what happens with that. But anyway, it's at lows, right? Pretty much 52-week lows for VKTX. So I think a good sign there. Which brings me here to Baidu, and I was talking about it yesterday too. And we had that move right at the open. It was $89, and then it just embarked on a morning rally all the way up to 94 and change before pulling back a little bit in the afternoon. As reports that China and the U.S. weren't going to have discussions yesterday. At some point, they will, probably this week. I think there's so much into the tariff story. I actually think the relations between China and U.S. are going to be better, and I think it's going to bode well for China ADRs. They talk about China popping these tariffs on the U.S., and it's on like $14 billion worth of exports from the U.S., right? So it makes for great narratives and buzzwords and creates all these conversations that, oh my gosh, the U.S. and China are in this great trade war. I just don't think that's going to be the case. So, and not only that's just some of the new stuff they announced is going to come out for next week. And the U.S. already has restrictions on chips and all that stuff. So anyway, watching Baidu here, I was talking about yesterday, possibly add some strikes in the next week. If it breaks back over 92, I'll look for some strikes and some calls in the next week as well on Baidu. Align reports earnings after the close. Similar situation here. I was looking at calls Monday and Tuesday. The premiums on the 265s kind of stayed flat yesterday. Watch at 3 o'clock today. You'll see the premiums just start to elevate on the line into the close. It's happened over and over again. I'll see what the 260s or 265s look like as we start nearing 2 o'clock or even in the morning. If they come down, I'll look to get some strikes, and then with the premise of locking most or all of them in before the close. If I get some out to cover costs and ride a few into earnings, I'll do that. If not, I'll just close them out and revisit, because Align's going to have a big move. It's either going to be up huge, 250, 260, 270, or this could be the earnings that drops back under 200. I don't think that'll be the case. The company has had a long history of buying back stock, so the EPS and all that growth is kind of like, I'm not saying it's an Apple story, but some of the move up in Apple has been because there's less shares out there, right? So, all right, rants for other days, that's Align. And then DocuSign. And I was looking for strikes this week. I might look to get some 105s for next week. Tight setup here, held that 50-day moving average. I still think it's going to visit that 107, similar like Shopify. Finally visited its earnings highs from back in December. I think the same is going to happen here with DocuSign. So we'll see how that plays out. And then last but not least, I keep trying to do this here. This is going to be, I try and put the ideas so you can kind of see the bid ask of what I'm looking at. So those are some of the strikes. Doesn't mean that's all I'm looking at today, but if AMD finds a bottom here, 107, 108, and depending on what like the 112s, 113s look like at the open, don't be surprised if I had some spec calls there, some lottos, and same with Google. I wouldn't be surprised if Google reverses course and maybe breaks back over 200 bucks. So I'll be watching that one. And that's it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Oh, and the headlines. I'm sure at some point today, tomorrow, Friday, next week, there'll be a headline saying that 10% tariffs on the EU. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And I'm sure the market's going to have weakness. I just hope it's not near the end of the day on option expiration or what have you. But these headlines are going to continue to come, I think, for the foreseeable future. All right, let's have a great day. I'll be back. Rock and roll.